Good morning and welcome to another Chip Chat. With me this morning, I've got Grant, who's been on with me a few times before. Say hello, Grant.
Hello.
And we are going to be talking about probably the most uninteresting story ever to come out of gaming. You know, that slightly small story that happened yesterday with Microsoft announcing that they're buying Activision Blizzard, because no one was really interested in that, and that didn't explode the internet, did it?
No, not at all.
And what I'm going to do is briefly I'm going to read out the statement from Microsoft, and then Grant and I are going to discuss it and say what our reactions were and how we feel about it after a good sleep. Well, I hope you had a good sleep last night.
I did actually, yeah.
So
thankfully.
We're all fresh as a daisy and ready to talk about it. So here we go. As you can see, I've got the page up here, and it says Xbox Plus, Activision Blizzard and King, and we'll get to that in a bit. And it says, welcoming the incredible teams and legendary franchises of Activision Blizzard to Microsoft Gaming. Creators of Call of Duty, Warcraft, Candy Crush, Tony Hawk, Diablo, Overwatch, Spyro, Hearthstone, Guitar Hero, Crash Bandicoot, StarCraft, and more join Team Xbox. As a team, we are on a mission to extend the joy and community of gaming to everyone on the planet. We all know that gaming is the most vibrant and dynamic form of entertainment worldwide, and we've experienced the power of social connection and friendship that gaming makes possible. As we pursue that mission, it is incredibly exciting to announce that Microsoft has agreed to acquire Activision Blizzard. Over many decades, the studios and teams that make up Activision Blizzard have earned vast wellsprings of joy and respect from billions of people all over the world, and a few lawsuits as well. We are incredibly excited to have the chance to work with the amazing, talented, dedicated people across Activision Publishing, Blizzard Entertainment, Beenox, Demonware, Digital Legends, High Moon Studios, Infinity Ward, King, Major League Gaming, Radical Entertainment, Raven Software, Sledgehammer Games, Toys for Bob, Treyarch, and every team across Activision Blizzard. Until this transaction closes, Activision Blizzard and Microsoft Gaming will continue to operate independently. Once the deal is complete, the Activision Blizzard business will report to me as CEO, Microsoft Gaming. That's Phil Spencer. Upon close, we will offer as many Activision Blizzard games as we can within Xbox Game Pass and PC Game Pass, both new titles and games from Activision Blizzard's incredible catalogue. We also announced today that Game Pass now has more than 25 million subscribers. As always, we look forward to continuing to add more value and more great games to Game Pass. The fantastic franchises across Activision Blizzard will also accelerate our plans for cloud gaming, allowing more people in more places around the world to participate in the Xbox community using phones, tablets, laptops, and other devices you already own. Activision Blizzard games are enjoyed on a variety of platforms, and we plan to continue to support those communities moving forward. As a company, Microsoft is committed to our journey for inclusion in every aspect of gaming, tell that to Bobby Kotick, among both employees and players. We deeply value individual studio cultures. We also believe that creative success and autonomy go hand in hand with treating every person with dignity and respect. We hold all teams and all leaders to this commitment. We're looking forward to extending our culture of proactive inclusion to the great teams across Activision Blizzard. So Bobby Kotick's out on his ear. Around the world, there is no more exciting venue for fun and connection than video games. And there has never been a better time to play than right now. As we extend the joy and community of gaming to everyone, we look forward to welcoming all our friends at Activision Blizzard to Microsoft Gaming. And that came as an incredible surprise to me, because my first, the first I heard of this was there was a tweet by, let me see if I can find it.
The Washington, is it the Wall Street Journal?
Well, the first I saw was actually somebody, Akami Games, who I follow and who also follows me. And, he said, breaking, Microsoft is nearing a deal to purchase Activision Blizzard. And I responded with, stop trolling. and a
Oh,
wink.
I saw your tweet. I think somebody said that it went from breaking as a rumor to a reality in about 9 minutes or something.
Yeah, it was incredibly fast, and you know, you and I were talking on Twitter, and there were other people talking on Twitter, and you said, you know, because I said something, and then you came back on Twitter and said, no, it's real, it's true, and a lot of people were saying, yeah, this is actually, and then I went in and I saw this announcement, and I was like, wow, I mean, tell me in a minute what you thought of when you first saw this, but when I first saw this, I almost couldn't process it. It was almost impossible for me to process because Bethesda was big. But this is like 10 times in terms of the money they've spent. This is 10 times the Bethesda deal.
Yeah. I know. It's I was exactly the same. I read it and I thought, is that some sort of elaborate joke or something? Because I couldn't process it as real to begin with either. Because the scale, yeah, and then I thought, but surely they're too big. But then when you think about it after the dust settled, you think, well, this is Microsoft. Remember what Microsoft's market capitalization is. They're in the trillions. They do have the resources to do this. And we were told they were going to buy another big gaming company. It's just that people didn't think it was going to be one that big.
Yeah, I mean,
You know?
I never for a moment. And I mean, you know, apparently there were rumors bubbling around last year, but I hadn't heard anything concrete. And I just dismissed it. You know, all the stuff I'd heard, the you know, few people on Twitter suggesting things. And then there was somebody who said, with all the stuff blowing up about Bobby Kotick and the management at Activision Blizzard, somebody on Twitter said, and I'll see if I can find it. Just see if I can find it. I don't think I've got it here. But somebody on Twitter said, no, I haven't got it. Somebody on Twitter said, you know, buy Activision Blizzard, saying to Microsoft, buy Activision Blizzard and you know, get rid of Bobby Kotick and all that, you know. And somebody else came back and said, well, it's going to cost about 70 billion. This was last year.
I think that was that Randall Four guy, wasn't it? The one who's the real Xbox. He's like an Xbox advocate or podcaster. I think it was him who said that, and it was like good guess or something.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, talk about hitting it on the head. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, you know, everybody, I suppose, gets a guess right occasionally, but that was really on the money. I mean, and I know, you know, he's got connections with some insiders and stuff, but I don't think that was anything to do with insiders. I think that was just.
No, I think the biggest thing as well is that because of the bad publicity, the toxicity surrounding sort of Activision Blizzard in general, people wouldn't associate Microsoft as being a possible purchaser. But then a few things make sense when you look at the stuff that Phil Spencer said about Activision. Not initially, but he went on a podcast recently where he just couldn't comment on stuff, and you thought, well, that makes sense as to why he wasn't able to comment.
Yeah, wasn't that
at the time?
Was that the Wall Street Journal or somebody he did, or the New York?
It was someone like that. Yeah, he was on a recent one.
Yeah, I listened to that whole thing, and he, you know, as usual, Phil Spencer's pretty. He's pretty open as far as he can be. Obviously, there are the things he can't say, but when that whole Activision Blizzard thing was brought up, I was listening to that and I was thinking, he's really hedging here. And there were a few people criticizing Microsoft on Twitter and across the internet, saying, you know, oh, they're just saying stuff and they're not doing much. But the reality was that, you know, when he said that they are, and I'll see if I can find that. Yeah, I've got it here from Bloomberg. It says, Microsoft Corp's head of Xbox said he's, and I quote, evaluating all aspects of our relationship with Activision Blizzard and making ongoing proactive adjustments. Yeah, you're not kidding.
Yeah, that's quite an open statement when you look at it in the context of what we just heard, isn't it? It's like, yeah, evaluating in more ways than people thought as well.
Yeah, we're reevaluating. We're going to buy the bloody company and sort it out.
That's right. Well, that's one aspect which I think is really important, because there's one side of me that thinks, yeah, I mean, there's different hats you can put on with this. As a consumer, it means we're going to get access to a lot of great games on Game Pass, because they've mentioned that in the statement. You know, as much as they can, once the deal goes through, they'll put their back catalogue and some current games on Game Pass. Great. Game Pass looks even better. But there's the other side where it's like, well, is this a good thing for the industry as a whole? We don't know, because there's fewer companies. Well, there's fewer independent companies, but then there's not really a huge amount of big AAA publishers anyway, is there, in the gaming industry? I mean, if you look at it, I mean, yes, consolidation means there's fewer, but so there's part of me that thinks that might not be a good thing. But then we'll see, because Microsoft have an opportunity here to completely change the culture at Activision Blizzard. And God knows it needs changing, because that company has, well, some really bad. They've had some, basically, they're very outdated. Their ideas about diversity, inclusivity are just,
well, it's basically a frat boy culture.
It's a frat boy culture. That's kind of the phrase I was looking for, exactly.
And
so Microsoft are known for being a very much more inclusive company when it comes to their hiring practices. If you look at the top people at Xbox, it's split equally between men and women. You know, there's racial diversity. It's really good. So they do put their money where their mouth is.
Yeah, and we have to say here that they're not perfect by any manner of means. And even
they're not. No.
Even Phil Spencer said that, and that they need to do more. But they're making all the right noises, and as long as their actions fall in line with the noises they're making, because often companies make noises and don't do anything.
Yeah.
As long as their actions follow along with the noises they're making, and they do seem to be, you know, following along from what they say. They do seem to lay it out and then do it. And yes. I think that's a good thing, and I think that can only be good for the people working at Activision Blizzard and King and, you know, all the other companies that come under that umbrella.
Well, it remains to be seen. I mean, they did put out a statement. I think the Workers' Alliance. They said something like, it was interesting, but it doesn't change our situation at the current time, which is true. That needs to be resolved to a degree where the parties that are being wronged are dealt with and get a fair outcome from this. That's the most important.
I mean, in the short term, at the moment, Microsoft can't do anything.
No, they can't do anything themselves,
because you know, they can put pressure on, because they're in a situation where they are, all things being equal, as long as it's ratified by the European Union and it's ratified by the US and all the rest of it, and we don't get antitrust issues, as long as that all goes through, they are going to own Activision Blizzard. And so, that being the case at the moment, they can put on some pressure, but there's a limit to what they can do until they actually own the company.
Yeah, this is, I mean, to a certain extent, they're going to be inheriting some problems associated with Activision Blizzard's lawsuits. Obviously, even if it's just the fallout from the end result of the inevitable court stuff that's going to go on and dispute with workers. So they have an opportunity to be able to deal with what they can once they inherit that. But like you say, in the meantime, they don't really have any power over that.
Yeah, I mean, they can just basically prod and say, do this, you know, but until they actually own the company, there's legal issues there as well. There's things they literally cannot do until they own the company.
No, that's true.
And you know, we're talking about, I saw somebody yesterday saying that they think it will be probably summer next year before it's finally all ratified and all the, you know, T's are crossed and the I's are dotted and all the rest of it.
Sounds about right. These things take time usually.
Yeah,
to go through.
So it's going to be a while. So following on from that, though, given that, assuming that we don't get into antitrust, and we can talk about that a bit in a minute, but assuming that it does all go through and everything works out, will Bobby Kotick be there in 3 years' time?
No, I don't think so. I think initially people were saying that from the statements that they put out to it looked like he was going to stay on through the transition. But I think if you read a little bit more into it, and then I think there was someone from Bloomberg directly asked him, and the way he responded, it almost made out as if he'll be gone as soon as the takeover goes through completely from Microsoft's side. And if you read a little bit into Phil Spencer's statement about how he said that Activision will report to me as CEO of Microsoft Gaming, I thought that was quite telling.
Yeah, I've got that.
Because I can't see a situation where Bobby Kotick reports to Phil Spencer, because he probably wouldn't want to because of the sort of person he is. But I'm just guessing here. But he doesn't come across as a great guy, does he? Let's be honest.
No, not at all.
And that's being diplomatic. And I just can't see a situation where he stays at the company at all only in the short term, only in the transition period, and then he'll be gone with a big fat amount of cash which he doesn't deserve. But then, if that's like someone else here, if that's the price to pay to clean up Activision Blizzard, then you could argue it's worth it if Microsoft are then able to go in and change the culture of the company.
Yeah, I mean, just let me read this again. Going to what you just said, it says, until this transaction closes, Activision Blizzard and Microsoft Gaming will continue to operate independently because they have to. We've just discussed that. Once the deal is complete, the Activision Blizzard business will report to me as CEO of Microsoft Gaming. And so, yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I don't think that Bobby Kotick will be the sort of guy who can see himself reporting to Phil Spencer.
No.
And so I do think he'll be gone. And I think probably quite a few of the senior management at Activision Blizzard will be gone as well, because anybody who has got any of that sort of toxicity, of that frat boy culture, anybody who is touched by that, rightly or wrongly, I mean, I'm sure there must be people who are in the company who aren't guilty of anything, perhaps, but I'm only speculating there. But anyone who's been touched by that at all will probably be gone, because Microsoft won't want to be tainted by that.
And the thing is, when they gave out some stats about Activision Blizzard, they had a really low. When it came to like hiring, just like women, I think they only had like 10% of their company or something that was women. And if it doesn't fit in with Microsoft's culture, then Microsoft own the company, so they can completely change that. Well,
I get the feeling with Microsoft, they couldn't care less whether you're male, female, black, white, trans, straight, whatever. As long as you can do the job, they want the best people for the job, and that's how it should be. Let's be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that is definitely how it should be. And eradicating, like you say, this all aspects of this like toxic culture is of prime importance. Because, like you say, anyone associated with, even in the slightest degree, with perpetuating this kind of like old and really sexist, racist, outdated mindset need to be gone. And there's an opportunity to completely clean out the company and start again and change the structure of it. Because why does it need to stay almost as if this Activision Blizzard? You could separate out the business and utilize these development teams to the best of their abilities, not just get them making Call of Duty on a yearly cycle. I think that will change. I think a lot of what Microsoft, once they take over the business, I think they'll change a hell of a lot of things.
Well, I think
structurally, culturally.
If you look at the way Microsoft seem to be doing stuff, and I'm not an insider, so I don't actually know what's going on behind closed doors, but if you look at the way they seem to be doing stuff, the teams that they've bought seem to be allowed a certain amount of autonomy in the way they operate. And so, they make the games, and there's not too much of an iron fist controlling exactly what they do. And that's good in terms of creativity. And I look at something like Blizzard, and I think Blizzard has really suffered under Activision. And I think that perhaps we could see Blizzard given a bit more autonomy again, and maybe allowing the creatives to do what they're good at, create.
I think so, because if you look at Blizzard, especially the last few years, I mean, the quality of their games always used to be a thing that made Blizzard stand out, because they just made high quality PC games. I remember when I first built a PC, one of the first games I played was Warcraft 2, and they always had this reputation for each release was like almost better than the last game, and the quality went up and up. But they reached a point. I mean, for me personally, Overwatch was the last Blizzard game I enjoyed, and that was 5 years ago. And ever since, they've just it feels to me like they've not been allowed to express themselves in the same way that they used to. But that's partly because a lot of the early creatives, people like Jeff Kaplan, they've left the company.
Yeah.
Probably because they don't like the culture that was sort of developing in Blizzard. They're no longer maybe. I mean, it is speculation, but it seems to me, if you look at the end result of the games that they've released, they've just not been as high quality in recent years. And they've still got these IPs like Diablo, like World of Warcraft. I mean, there's potential there for Microsoft to re-inject, some passion and life into these really talented development studios.
Yeah.
So, we could see a lot of good come out of this in that regard.
Well, I look at some of the teams that they've bought, and the way in which what's the game that the Psychonauts that came out this year. I look at what's happened with Psychonauts and the fact we got Psychonauts 2, and that actually makes me think. Well, the way they've treated that and the way they've let the creative team do their thing. Hopefully that's what we'll get from Blizzard from now on. From now on, I mean, it's probably 5 years down the line before we see a real.
Could be.
Given that it's over a year before they will have finalised the deal, and then it's going to take a while. I mean, you're not going to change the culture completely overnight, and you can't, because if you change it completely overnight, you could cause just as many problems as you solve.
Yeah, exactly.
So they're going to have to be very careful about due diligence and keeping the people on who are going to help push the divisions forward, and while losing any of that kind of corporate bullshit that has happened in recent years. I mean,
I think Microsoft believing in collaboration between like studios as well. They really encourage sharing ideas. You look at things like, I can see some of the DNA, for instance, of id in Halo Infinite when it comes to like the gunplay and things like that. And there's a great opportunity as well to share all that knowledge between the studios now, and like a lot of cross collaboration could produce some really interesting results. But it's going to take time. I mean, Bethesda was only purchased barely a year ago, so we're going to see the benefits of games that were already in development, like Starfield.
Yeah.
But when it comes to Microsoft's DNA in the games, it's still going to take a while before we see that from Bethesda and obviously from Activision Blizzard.
I mean, I think one of the first things we'll see will be very much like what happened with Bethesda. I mean, as soon as it completes, you're going to see a whole raft of Activision Blizzard games appearing on Game Pass.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good thing in the short term, because, and what I also think we might see, maybe not straight away, is stuff like appearing on console that was previously just PC only, because for a long time, especially Blizzard, they didn't really produce a lot of console games. I mean, they did conversions of games like Diablo and Overwatch, obviously, but think of things like World of Warcraft. It's always been a PC game. If that appeared on Xbox, it opens up another market entirely. And if they start to turn that game around, because it's been going down the toilet for years, then you could see a huge new audience for those games. But the fact that you can put all these games on Game Pass, they did that with Bethesda. It's great for people, I think, because there's a lot of stuff there that's still good. It's still worth playing.
Absolutely. Next question though is, given the size of this deal, and given that it's catapulted Microsoft up to being third in terms of gaming companies, in terms of revenue, I believe that is.
Yeah.
Do you think, because I saw some people were talking about this, do you think there may be any issues with sort of antitrust? Do you think that they could run into trouble with this deal? I'm not sure that they will. I think it's possible. And I'll explain why I don't think it will in a minute. But what's your gut?
My feeling is that it won't really be an issue. There might be some questions raised, obviously, because of the size of the deal. That's always going to naturally happen when you think of a purchase of that magnitude. But the thing to remember, and the thing why I don't think it would be an issue, is because it propels them into third place. It doesn't propel them to first place. It doesn't propel them above Sony. And suddenly they're not going from a company that's had X amount of revenue and then suddenly it's 5 times bigger. Yes, it's making them bigger. They're going to overtake Nintendo, which is quite significant. But it's not going to make them huge, which is why I personally don't think it will be an issue in the long term. Yeah,
I agree. And I think there's a couple of things there. I absolutely agree with that it's not going to make them the biggest. They are not going to be a monopoly. I saw some people on Twitter going on about, Microsoft are going to be a monopoly. They're not. There's still a lot of competition out there. We're seeing consolidation. And, my personal view is here that I'm happier that Microsoft have bought Activision Blizzard than somebody like Tencent. I think that would have been a big issue if somebody like Tencent had bought them.
Yeah, that raises other that raises trust and privacy issues in itself. The thing is, I've heard this argument as well, especially on Twitter, where someone said, "Well, Microsoft are just buying creativity; they're not responding to Sony in a way as like via good games." Now, you see, this is an argument I don't really buy, and it's because Sony have basically carved out like a really strong position in the console space by adopting a very specific strategy, which is making these high quality, high production AAA games.
Yep.
Even though they're all of a certain ilk, there's not a lot of variety in them. What Microsoft are doing...
Careful, you get yourself lynched saying that. I agree, incidentally.
Yeah, but I talk from that as someone who loves the games that Sony produced. Last generation, I love games like Horizon, like God of War. I think they're fantastic games. But what Microsoft are doing, you see, with Activision Blizzard, they get a huge variety of different types of games in their portfolio that they haven't had before.
Yeah.
Now, they've got 2 MMOs in Elder Scrolls Online and World of Warcraft, which they haven't had before. They also get access to PC strategy games, to hero shooters like Overwatch. You know, what they're doing is they're trying to offer themselves up as a company that offers a little bit of everything and not just one type of game, because they got criticized in the last gen for only having certain franchises that were like racing shooters, Gears of War, like Halo and Forza. They were known as that company.
They've basically got everything now apart from maybe JRPGs.
Well, exactly. It's like they're trying to break certain markets, and let's not forget how important the mobile part of this deal is.
Well, that's what I was going to come to in a minute. Yeah.
But yeah, we'll talk about it in a minute. But this is why I don't agree that Microsoft don't have good exclusives. Maybe last gen that was true. I don't think it's true this gen, because they've already given us Halo Infinite and Forza Horizon 5, both of which are great games. And we're going to get good games in the future. How long in the future, we don't know yet. But if Starfield turns out to be great, then that's a bonus for Microsoft, because they weren't directly involved in the development of that. They kind of came in halfway through with the purchase of Bethesda. But it gives you... It's exciting for me as a gamer, because I think, well, look at all these variety of games we're going to get. We're going to get this broad scope of games, whereas before it was slightly narrower.
Yeah. And I don't entirely subscribe to this idea that Microsoft didn't have good games last gen. They didn't have as many as Sony.
No, they didn't.
And they still had some decent games. They weren't... Two things. They didn't have as many as Sony, and the ones they did have weren't... I mean, I really liked a couple of them, but they weren't really up to the same standard generally as what Sony were putting out.
The thing is, people are comparing... Sony do very specific types of games which are good. You can't deny that they produce some high quality games, but if you don't like third-person action games, where'd you go? Because that's pretty much most of what Sony produce. I mean, I like them, but I'm not going to sort of turn around and say everyone does.
No, absolutely.
And it's like gamers look for different types of games. I like to move around a bit in terms of the type of games I play, just to keep things interesting, because if I just stuck to one, I just get pretty bored.
Yeah.
So it's good to have that variety, and Microsoft are just saying to gamers, look, we've got these portfolio of games now. So it's good from a consumer's perspective. Whether long term it's good for the gaming industry as a whole, we don't know, obviously, because it's too early to say.
Well, that's the other thing as well from there. I saw somebody saying that, relating to the antitrust thing, and I thought he was talking nonsense, but he's saying, they're going to need to keep games on the PlayStation, because then it will be seen as they're not monopolizing the industry. I don't think the people looking at that will care less one way or another whether Microsoft are putting their games on PlayStation or not. I think they'll just be entirely looking at how much market dominance they might have, or those kind of things.
Well, this is it. I mean, one thing I saw, which I thought was an interesting point, and I agree with, is that obviously games that are in development and deals that they will honour, because they've said that. So
it's not worth it to them to be honest.
No, the thing is, it's like one thing I think they'll do. I think they'll stop the yearly cycle of Call of Duty, because God knows it needs it, because the game has just become so stale. Another thing, if it's a live service game like Warzone, yeah, it probably will stay multi-platform. but there's no incentive for them once the development cycle of like the next few Call of Duties is finished. There's no incentive for them to keep them on PlayStation. And
Well,
I don't think they're going to.
I was going to ask you about that. How do you feel about this idea that Microsoft are going to make the games exclusive or not? Because we got the same thing as we got with Bethesda, that they can't afford to leave money on the table. Yeah, they absolutely can. The whole point of this is to drive engagement with their platform. If you've got Call of Duty, and you want to push sales of your consoles and, more importantly, Game Pass, because that's what this is all about. Forget the consoles. Don't forget them, but you know what I mean. Consoles aren't the big thing here.
Yeah.
It's Game Pass. Game Pass, Game Pass, Game Pass, Game Pass. That's all they are interested in. And if you want to play Game Pass on a console, or you want to play it on a PC, or you want to play it on a phone via streaming, that's what they want. They want that regular subscription stream. And one of the ways you get people to subscribe is to have games that no one else has got. Now, Call of Duty is still, if not the biggest, one of the biggest shooters on the planet. And if you say to people, you can have Call of Duty every year or every 2 years or however the cycle goes in the future, if you subscribe to Game Pass.
Yeah.
And, people have got the option of subscribing to Game Pass, buying an Xbox or whatever to get it, or not having it and having a PlayStation. If they're a Call of Duty player, what are they going to do?
Well, this is the thing, you see. People underestimate, to a certain degree, that aspect of it. Because Microsoft are all about driving the content through Game Pass. It's not about the console. It's about the fact that they want a subscription off of you. And whether that comes from a PC, from the cloud, or from an Xbox, it doesn't really matter. What matters is getting those subscriptions. So what I think will happen is, I think it'll have a significant effect on Call of Duty, because the people that still want to play it, well, they're going to find a way to play it. And if that involves a new way, moving from PlayStation to either Xbox or PC, they'll do it, because that franchise is huge. I can't see all the Call of Duty players suddenly going, well, I'm not going to, if I can't play it on PlayStation, I'm going to stop playing it. I mean, there might be a handful of people that do that.
Yeah, but it'll only be the Sony fanboys. Most people are a lot more pragmatic.
The casual gamers, I mean, what a lot of people who live in a bubble and Twitter forget is that the casual gamers, the people that play Call of Duty and FIFA, make up a huge percentage of the audience, the gaming audience.
Yeah.
And they'll do what it takes to play Call of Duty, and if that means they got to buy a Game Pass subscription, they're going to do it, and you're going to see Game Pass numbers go through the roof, and I think they will. And it could just be from something like, because that's the only place to play Call of Duty. Maybe not immediately, because it'll probably stay on PlayStation for a little bit.
Yeah, it'd be a few. I reckon it'd be two, maybe 3 years before. Yeah,
because they could still be in development, like the next ones for PlayStation, and obviously Xbox have said they'll honour that. But let's not make a mistake. This is a massive purchase just for those sort of IPs.
Yeah, and you don't make a purchase like that and go, oh yeah, you can have it. What somebody said, and I think it was Jeff.
Yeah, exactly.
I think Jeff Grubb said this. It may not have been him, so if it's not him, I apologise. But somebody said on Twitter that they could use this as a way to perhaps strong arm Sony into taking Game Pass.
I was just about to say that. That's interesting, because I wonder, will Sony turn around and say, well, if we want Call of Duty, we're going to have to offer Game Pass on our console? I just think that's funny, though.
Yeah,
it's just so bizarre, isn't it, when you think about it?
And I think Sony would be really reluctant to do that, and for good reason.
Yes.
Because they're giving their competitor a ready platform for people to play their games.
Well, I think what we're going to see is accelerated development of their response to Game Pass, because they've got no choice now. They have to respond to Game Pass properly.
Yeah, and I said this in the past, and you can remind me if I'm completely wrong on this, but I said that in the long term, well, medium term, I would say actually, in the medium term, Sony are going to have to start bringing their games day one to whatever the service is that they offer.
Yeah, absolutely. They don't. I know they don't want to do it, and everyone's saying, "Oh, it's not. It will devalue them." No, I mean, I've got my own I've had my own doubts about Game Pass because there's a part of me that thinks, well, does it devalue this idea of purchasing a game?
Yeah.
You know, but then
That's the answer to that
the
one.
way-
Yeah, it does.
and I get that completely. But the other side of me thinks, well, yeah, but it's also a really good service to try out a game you're not sure of because you're only paying the monthly fee. I mean, I basically what I'm saying is it's got more advantages than disadvantages, but let's not pretend that there's not downsides to Game Pass.
Oh, there's
because
no
there
ownership.
is.
If a game
Yeah,
goes off Game
exactly.
Pass and it's no longer available to buy, that's it. You don't have it anymore, and you have no control over that.
And that happens, and I look and I see every month games that leave Game Pass because they're only licensed for X amount of time.
Yeah.
So what I think people should be aware of is just don't rely on it as a place where you're always going to be able to play the type of games you want, because it's not necessarily that. But what it is it's a great service for people that can't afford to buy new games, that want to try out games.
And let's be
Sony-
honest, it's already been done, Grant. I mean, it hasn't been
Yeah.
done. It's happening now. We're watching it transpire in the gaming industry, but it's already happened in music. It's already happened in TV and film. You know, people on the whole now have stopped buying discs. You know,
Yeah, exactly. They have.
and this is happening in the gaming industry. It's not a difficult one to predict that the vast majority of people will be consuming their games via services like Game Pass and, you know, streaming services down the line as well. I mean, you know, the reason they've got streaming with Game Pass, it's not a coincidence. They know where this is heading.
Yeah, Microsoft have changed the nature of the industry. They've changed the narrative, and they said it's not about selling exclusives through traditional channels via console boxes. It's content driven now through Game Pass.
Yeah.
And that's a significant shift. It's a friend of mine was saying, you know, he's been a journalist in this. He's saying it's a really significant shift in the industry. And, you know, let's not underestimate this. I mean, Microsoft, you know, when they initially introduced Game Pass, they said, well, we're changing the narrative. We're changing the way people consume games. And initially there was some skepticism, obviously. And Sony were like, well, we're selling our exclusives through, you know, our platform, and we want people to keep buying them. But now Sony are in a position where they kind of have no choice. They have to come up with some sort of credible answer to Game Pass. And if they still want to hang on to this idea that they shouldn't put their day one exclusives on some sort of Game Pass service, I think they're going to have to.
They're going to have to, Grant. I don't think there's any doubt about that at all. If they want to compete, their games are going to have to be available on their service, whatever they want to call it. You know, because I know that PlayStation Now is going to, they're looking at, I don't know, changing the name and bringing it more in line with Game Pass. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes there, but something's going to have to change. PlayStation Now is not selling. I mean, I subscribe to it. I barely use it. It's not that bad a service. It's fine. But it's not Game Pass. It doesn't look Game Pass. I don't need to buy games on the Xbox. I just don't.
No.
I still do on occasion. You know, if there's a game I particularly like, I will still buy it. And Microsoft have said, Microsoft have said it's still driving game sales in some quarters. So. That being the case, and I haven't seen the figures on this, but Sony have to look at this and think, well, if we can produce a service, you know, that's on a par and we put our games on day one, yeah, we might initially lose some revenue. I mean, you know, their response was to put their games up to bloody $70, which I thought was ridiculous. At the time when they're under pressure, they put their prices up. That's not what you do.
I don't get that mentality. But I mean, the way I can see it happening, though, is with Sony, because this is the type of thing they do. If they introduced a service, like a monthly subscription service, no, it would probably double the cost of Game Pass, because they don't want to devalue their exclusives, do they? We already know that from the fact that they charge us $70 for them on PS5.
But if they do that, they're shooting themselves in the foot, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, the thing is, if you look at what are called the premier subscription services, you've got EA Play Pro and you've got Ubisoft Plus. They're like $14.99 a month, so they're almost double the cost of Game Pass themselves.
Yeah.
So Sony they've got a choice here. They can compete with Game Pass on a more equal footing, but then can they afford to do that? Because Microsoft can afford to run Game Pass at a loss. They can afford to do it for. I mean, it's a ridiculous price. Like, I mean, I pay $7.99 for PC Game Pass, and you got 300 games on it.
Yeah, yeah.
And the value that people get from it is crazy.
That's the problem that Sony have. I think is that they are competing against what is a juggernaut. You know,
Yeah.
and I think when Microsoft said a few years back that they didn't view Sony as their competitor, I mean, they were being a little bit disingenuous there, but there was also some truth in that.
And they're right, aren't
The real people that they're concerned with are the other massive players in the tech industry. Google, Apple, you know, Amazon, Tencent. You know, these companies are juggernauts. And the consolidation we've seen here, you know, Microsoft buying Activision Blizzard, I think I said this before we started. This isn't just about Microsoft buying Activision Blizzard. This is about Microsoft stopping Tencent or Apple or Amazon or whoever it might be buying Activision Blizzard. Because they give themselves the advantage of having all those properties, but they also prevent their competitors from having them. And
interestingly enough, I think Tencent had a 10% stake in Activision Blizzard, so Microsoft would have to buy out their share of the company, I assume.
Whoa!
So that is a direct move to stop Tencent. Yeah, you got to remember these. Microsoft are trying to put another aspect, obviously, is cloud.
Yeah,
and with Activision Blizzard, they get access to a library. I was thinking about this earlier. A library of games that maybe console players have not been able to play before, but could be as sort of some cloud technology. So it gives them a chance to develop that side of things even more.
Yeah.
The idea of pushing the ability to play the game on any platform on the go. And
it immediately pushes them to the forefront of the esports arena as well.
Yes, esports as well. Yeah. Absolutely.
And with King, you mentioned this earlier, with King, they've immediately put themselves as a big player in the mobile gaming market, which is somewhere where they weren't, as far as I'm aware, they weren't really very active in that area.
No, and I think when you look at Activision Blizzard's like yearly earnings, King makes up a huge portion of their profits because mobile gaming is so profitable.
Oh God, I saw yesterday when I was looking, because I looked at King and you know, obviously I was looking around this and looking at some of the figures and trying to understand what the hell was going on and trying to basically get my head around the implications of the financials and it was almost too much to take it all in. But when I looked at the mobile gaming market and I looked at, you know, a lot of gamers don't get this, you know, console gamers and PC gamers don't seem to understand that the mobile gaming market dwarfs both the console market and the PC market put together.
Absolutely.
In regions like China and the Far East, the others just don't get a look in. That is all gaming is, pretty much, you know? I mean,
you got to remember, I mean, you mentioned the Far East. In Japan, for instance, people game on the go a lot because they have to commute and things like that. And that sort of market is so lucrative because they want these fast, easy to play games that, you know, and people will be prepared to pay money for, you know. So the monetization in these games is so rife because of the nature of the type of games that are being made in the mobile space. It suits that. So the profitability is high, and it's a lot higher because the cost of development is a lot lower than AAA gaming, but the returns are so huge in comparison.
Yeah.
And people do forget this. It's like AAA gaming development is really expensive, but mobile development isn't, because the type of games that people want are not as sophisticated because they're sort of these bite-sized games.
And the numbers of people who play. I mean,
the numbers are huge.
Both the financials and in terms of the numbers of people who play, people who wouldn't consider themselves gamers. I mean, we had a friend of ours came round the other week, and she got her phone out at one point, and she was out having a look at, you know, I don't know if it was Candy Crush, but it was one of those types of games. Yeah. And she will occasionally spend, you know, a quid here or a quid there on it. Well, you know, if you've got 10 million people spending a quid.
This is the thing. It's like you don't think anything of spending a little bit of money like that, would you? If you're that type of gamer that's used to doing that, and people do it, and it's like you say, it all adds up, doesn't it, over time?
Yeah, and you know, I it's not my thing, and I know a lot of self-styled hardcore gamers don't like it. Nevertheless, the hardcore gamer is a niche market, really, in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, it's easy to forget that when you're in this sort of like when you're sort of hardcore gamer mindset on social media, you tend to be surrounded by people that think in a similar way. But let's sort of like put this in perspective. Microsoft have bought access to a huge portion of the casual gaming market with this purchase.
Yeah.
And that is massive for them, and it's for the industry as a whole. The sort of how that resonates outwards, in the coming years when it comes to changing. I said to a friend of mine, it's shifting the balance of power in the industry quite significantly.
Yeah, this whole narrative that Microsoft don't take gaming seriously is gone. It's over.
Yeah.
I thought it was over when they bought Bethesda, but if anyone was still in any doubt, they can stop doubting now. Microsoft are all in. Gaming
absolutely
is,
and
going to be a big part of their business moving forward.
Yeah, and that's obvious because now this is a move which tells the industry as a whole, the tech industry, not just the gaming industry. This is Microsoft making a big play for the gaming space. Bethesda was like dipping their toe in the water in comparison. Now they've just dived in.
Oh yeah, I mean, Bethesda was at the time. Bethesda was huge, but I mean, this is I don't know if I said this on this recording already, but I think I said it beforehand. This is like something like 10 times the size of the Bethesda purchase.
But this is it. You see, with Bethesda, it's like what I think they wanted was access to a number of studios that could produce these high quality single player games. That gave them kind of like a way to counter the Sony argument that high quality single player games were missing from Microsoft's portfolio. Yeah, they were. And with Bethesda, they get opportunity to write that. But with Activision Blizzard, they get an opportunity to make all the other games as well. That's like...
I mean, literally, is there any genre, well, apart from, like I say, I mentioned JRPGs, but is there any area where they're not? They haven't got a foot in it now? I mean, I
don't think there is. I mean, maybe you could argue, well, what about sports? I mean, yeah, you've got like the massive juggernauts like 2K and obviously EA, but EA are small. I mean, even purchase of EA would probably be half the size of Activision Blizzard.
Absolutely, but that actually brings me to the next question. Do you think that the acquisitions for Microsoft are over?
Well, probably not, because maybe for the next like year or two. But I can see Sony replying.
Yeah,
because somebody, I think it was Jeff Keighley, posted a list of the companies that are like up for grabs, and then you had some of the smaller ones like Capcom or Square Enix, and I could see maybe Sony going after them.
I could see that. I mean, what about companies like Tencent though? I mean, could you see Tencent maybe going in, or even sort of Apple or somebody like that buying somebody? Can you imagine Apple buying EA? I mean, Christ.
I think Tencent will almost certainly see something from Tencent in the next year. I would be surprised if not. They already invest in a lot of companies and have controlling interest in some. It seems to be mostly RPGs or with Tencent, like RPG companies, but they're after like a foothold in the West in terms of what genres are more popular here compared to like say Korea and Japan. So they're already trying to get like more of a foothold in like the shooter space. Yeah. And now that they can't get Call of Duty because it's gone to Microsoft, you might see Tencent make some significant moves.
Don't they already Don't they already own part of? Oh God, what's the name of the company? The company that I can't bloody speak. Bear with me a second, and I will tell you.
Right. You talked about you're talking about Remedy, are you?
No. I was the competitor to Steam on the PC.
Oh, Epic.
Yeah, that's it. Epic. Yeah. Don't they already own a percentage of Epic? Something like 10% of Epic or something.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah, they do.
I mean, they could maybe move towards Epic or something. Do you know what? I see that this big move from Microsoft. Going back to what I said before, this is about getting these properties, but it's also about stopping competitors getting them. And I can see this consolidation continuing for the next few years. And I can see the likes of EA and a lot of the smaller companies maybe getting bought up. Not necessarily by Microsoft. Sony will probably buy a few more.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
I can see Tencent doing it. I can see Apple, maybe Amazon. I don't know what's going on with Google because they gave up their game studio, so I don't know what they're doing.
I think when you consider, right, so you've got Sony at the top, you've got Tencent just below them, and then you've got Microsoft. The Sony and Tencent will be sweating at this move. They have to be. It's going to make them uncomfortable because they're being threatened. Their position's being threatened in the industry, so they kind of have to respond.
It's not just
to see how.
It's not just the financials. It's the footprint Microsoft will now have with Game Pass.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Going back to Game Pass, but they are way ahead of the curve. It seems to me in terms of this.
But I said it before, but they're just adopting the Amazon model. When Amazon were grown as a web company, it was like, wasn't it Jeff Bezos' motto where he said, get big fast and worry about the bottom line later. So Microsoft are doing that with Game Pass. They're running it at a loss, and they're prepared to run it at a loss while these acquisitions gain like enough momentum and financial return in order to make Game Pass profitable.
I mean,
so in the so there's a long-term strategy in place here for Microsoft, and it all goes through this Game Pass funnel.
And they talk about, Phil Spencer goes on about cadence a lot, about putting games out regularly. They're not going to have a problem with that now, are they? As long as they get their studios firing on all cylinders and they can manage, not putting out, 2 big games in the same month together too much. I mean, if they're different genres, then that's not such a big deal. But, you wouldn't want to put out 2 big shooters like Halo and Call of Duty, like within a week of each other. You'd want to avoid that. But as long as they can keep putting games out regularly throughout the year, and then they, like you say about Call of Duty, I agree with you. I think they may well stop the yearly out, coming out of Call of Duty, and then just stagger it. So like towards the end of the year, 1 big shooter. So 1 year it'll be Halo. Halo Infinite now, so it's a bit different. But Call of Duty, then something else the next year, then something else the next year. And then in between those, you'll have like Forza, and you've got your other games coming out as well, Overwatch. You've got Overwatch to come, Overwatch 2. I mean, Overwatch 2, if that came out as an Xbox exclusive, probably not, because I think there probably are already deals in place for that.
Yeah, I mean, that game's that's gone through some development. They lost their lead, the creative director of that walked out. That game's in trouble a little bit, but Microsoft could turn it around. This is the thing. They've got the luxury now of, like you say, staggering out these releases, and we could see like a major release on Game Pass every couple of months in future. Yeah, maybe not for a while, but because of how long it takes to develop. But
and ironically, because sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say what it also gives. It gives these. I'm trying to think of it from the perspective of these development studios. There's less of an incentive for them to release a profitable AAA game, because if they release it through Game Pass to a certain degree, they should have more creative freedom to try something a little bit different, because Microsoft, they might say to them, well, you don't have to make this amount of profit. This is about getting people to play the game through Game Pass, and not just. And I think that gives more freedom,
not just financial freedom, but and this could work the other way, but potentially time freedom as well. Because if you've got this many studios and you've got a regular cadence of stuff coming out, and 1 or 2 of your games are slipping, you can say, well, okay, look, take your time. We've got other games coming out this month. That's not a problem. We've got something that people can play.
Yeah.
Put it out in a couple of months' time. Put it out next year. And so, it gives them a bit more leeway to allow the developers to take their time to develop good games. Now, look, the reality is that game development is messy. It's not somebody can point their finger and say, we're going to make a success out of this and it's going to come out and it's going to be brilliant. We see all the time, even when people have got the best ideas and they want to do the best game, it still sometimes falls flat. So the reality here is that not all these games that Microsoft are going to be putting out are going to work. They're not all going to be like 88 or 90 score on Metacritic and all these kind of things. Some of them are going to fail, and some of them are going to be average. That's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah,
but
that's right.
They're going to have so many coming that if you have one that's a bit average or is not that great, next month you'll have another one coming along that is great, and everyone will forget about the one that wasn't.
Well, this is the thing. It's like, if you work out how much you would end up paying for Game Pass, and I expect they will put the price up, because obviously they're going to have to at some point
Yeah.
because they don't want to run at too much of a loss. But if you look at it, I mean, someone said it's like paying for free. It's like if you bought, say, 3 different AAA games a year, you would be, and then you were playing Game Pass. Basically, it's cheaper because you get access to those games for like less price than you would if you bought X number of AAA games. But it's like you say, there doesn't have to be every release has to be a banger. But if there was, say, at least 1 or 2 a year that were like high quality, then Game Pass subscriptions will just tick along at like a good rate, and probably a good rate of growth, because people will be willing to pay for it as long as they saw enough quality within like that 12-month period. And I think that will happen. I think there will be, it's like I go back to what I said earlier, the collaboration opportunities are great here, because AAA games aren't made by one studio. They're made by like 2 or 3, because they often have to help out.
Absolutely.
With different aspects of the game. And if we see, and suddenly you've got a developer that says, well, I've got 30 other studios I can tap into. And Microsoft encouraged that sort of thing.
Yeah, it seems to me from what they say, and again, we can only go by what they tell us, but from what they say, there's a real collegiate approach.
Yeah.
Everybody under that Microsoft umbrella can go to somebody at another developer and say, look, we've got this idea, but we've not been able to implement it quite right. You guys have got expertise in that area. Have you got someone who can help us out with that? And if you've got that collegiate approach, I mean, I remember a couple of years back when they were talking about, science and directed. Having directed science is great if you want to reach a certain thing. I mean, the example of that would be the vaccines that we've got for COVID. You've got a direction you need to go in, and you arrow straight towards that conclusion.
Yes.
But the other thing with science is that you have this collegiate thing where you have people of different disciplines working, and somebody does something and it's not quite what they were looking to do, but they've produced something interesting and they can hand that off to someone else. And you've got that same sort of thing happening here. If you've got that collegiate approach, somebody could come up with something interesting, but it's not quite quite a fit for their team. They can hand it off to another team, perhaps. So the potential there in terms of coming up with new ideas and creativity. I mean, this is the utopian ideal of all this, if you like. The flip side is that it can become too much of a monolith and nobody can manage it, and it all falls apart under its own weight.
It requires a very good strategy, and that Microsoft need to think sort of like long and hard about the right approach for this, because like you say, it can go wrong if it becomes too much, if it becomes too intransigent in terms of like the way that the game is developed. There has to be the right approach for the long term.
Yeah, and you're dealing with a lot of highly talented people, and when you're dealing with a lot of highly talented people, there's going to be a lot of egos. Let's be honest. So it's not all going to be smooth sailing. There's going to be bumps along the way. And but the interesting thing for me is I look at somebody like Phil Spencer, and somebody actually said this the other day as well, yesterday as well, that what happens when Phil Spencer goes, because he has been a steady pair of hands, and that's an interesting concept, of what happens next. But Phil Spencer. And I don't always agree with what he says. I don't always think he's absolutely honest. But I think within the gaming industry, he has been a bit of a breath of fresh air. And I think he has managed this taking on new teams and whatnot. And obviously it's early days yet. Even the Bethesda deal's early days. But he does seem to be quite good at navigating this. And they do seem, as a team, to have set it up in such a way that it does allow the developers to breathe a little bit. And
I think,
whether that works
out. A good team underneath.
Sorry, go on.
Sorry. I think he's got a good team underneath him. I think you're absolutely right. There has to be like a strategy that when he does walk away from Xbox, when he's had enough of like being in that kind of like leadership role, that there's enough, there's the right kind of structure in place that he could be sort of replaced without too much disruption. I think the problem is he's got this kind of personality that appeals to people because he's a gamer and people can relate to him. He's much more relatable than someone like Jim Ryan, who just looks like a businessman,
Absolutely.
in comparison. So yeah, there obviously might be some disruption, but I think as long as he's there to manage this sort of transition into like the new version of Microsoft, then I think that's the main thing. That's the most important thing. And yeah, he is great for Microsoft without a shadow of a doubt. He's changed the landscape of Microsoft. He's made them a serious contender in gaming, and he'll be remembered for that. Whatever happens.
And I think, we have to give Satya Nadella some credit here as well,
Yeah,
because he's given
definitely.
Phil Spencer the opportunity to do this, and he's given, and they've made the money available. Because,
Yeah,
if you look at Microsoft before Phil Spencer took over, they were operating kind of out on a limb, really. I mean, some of the higher ups, from what I gather, looking at that documentary and listening to what people have said in interviews, a lot of the higher ups at Microsoft at one time just didn't consider the gaming division to be of any importance at all, and they were feeding off scraps.
no, they didn't. I think there was a culture for years at Microsoft where they were playing catch up with a lot of companies, and they made some business mistakes generally as a company, where they made some bad purchases. They didn't see the value of certain technology, but now they have a CEO who sees this huge value and potential in the gaming division, and has given Phil Spencer the leeway to kind of operate in a way that puts Microsoft in a much more powerful position within the gaming industry. I mean, they're bigger than Nintendo now. That's let's not sort of like underestimate how huge that is. Nintendo are a big player in the gaming industry and have been around for a long time, and this is a really significant move.
Oh, I think it is. Financials in terms of the implications, everything. I also think there's another element as well. I think that Microsoft understands that gaming, for them at least, it may not apply to Sony. It maybe does to some extent to Sony. I don't think it applies too much to Nintendo. I think Nintendo are a gaming company and a gaming company only. But I think with Microsoft, they understand that the gaming landscape can bleed into other elements. This whole thing with, I know it's a buzzword at the moment, this whole thing with the metaverse and everything. But they have, even in this acquisition, I think they mentioned it, maybe not in this this welcoming incredible teams of Activision Blizzard. I'm not sure it was mentioned there, but there was somewhere where somebody mentioned about the metaverse and the way this is significant. And I think in terms of some of the technologies that they've acquired, because I think they actually acquired a company that was heavily involved in the technical side of Call of Duty, I think, even before they got hold of Activision. So they were already moving in that direction. I think gaming, Microsoft sees gaming beyond just gaming. I think, because some of the things that are developed within gaming, just looking at graphics development and stuff like that coming out of gaming, it gets applied to other areas. And I think Microsoft understand that, maybe more so than any of the companies working in that area. And I'm spitballing here, but that's the way it feels to me, anyway.
I mean, there's one thing I will say. I've mentioned it before. I don't know how significant it would be long term, but I still am surprised that Microsoft haven't invested in VR. And I don't know if that will be a mistake long term, but when I see a lot of companies like Apple kind of understanding that VR is developing, it's a little bit surprising. It might not be a big deal because it's not as if we don't have the options elsewhere, because we do, but you got to remember, this is a platform that has like Windows mixed reality, so they do to a certain extent understand and support VR, but maybe they just feel it's not really for them as a company to get involved with hardware, but they might get involved in some other means or way down the line. We don't know yet.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
I'm with you, actually. I find that one an odd one. They have spent an awful lot of money and R&D on the mixed reality side of things, but obviously that's not really come into the gaming scene.
I mean, just to put some sort of perspective on it, the Oculus Quest 2 has outsold the Xbox Series S and X now. So you can't really ignore that, I don't think.
No, I agree. I think the only thing at the moment, I don't know in terms of the actual forgetting what the term is, but how many games people are buying, how much people are spending on
Yeah.
that. I don't know how much
Sure.
the take up rate of the actual games is in relation to that, because I think
Yeah.
the Oculus has been extremely successful in terms of being an almost an impulse buy for a lot of people. I know people who aren't really into gaming who've bought an Oculus, and
Yeah, it's at the right price, isn't it? It's only $299, so it is an impulse buy. Like you say, you can use it to connect to PC if you've got the PC, but most people are buying it as a standalone. But I think your point is fair. It's like the attachment rate
that's the word
is
I was
going to be
looking for.
different. yeah, compared to console, and it's a different market. Let's be honest here. It's not. It's something you have to evaluate long term, because you've got to look at the trend of how VR adoption is. I mean, it's coming along, and Facebook Meta have done a good job with that. But the fact that you have to have a Facebook account to use it, and that's still a put off for some people. And I know they are supposedly getting rid of that, but maybe Microsoft are evaluating. We might see them purchase a VR tech company in the future, and it might be more of a low key thing. Obviously, compared to Activision Blizzard, anything's going to be lower key, but it's, as I said, it might not be that significant, in the long term. But we'll see, I guess.
Yeah, I think it will be, and I think Microsoft they've probably got their eye on this, and they probably do have people who are looking into this, and
R&D.
Yeah, I don't think it's something they're not looking at. I mean, we know that they're looking at mixed reality. I'm sure behind the scenes they're looking at it. They just maybe don't see it as something that. Well, I mean, you look at the PlayStation VR. It sold okay, but it wasn't exactly, it didn't break any records or anything. So,
yeah,
it might just be that Microsoft are keeping their powder dry for now, and that wouldn't surprise me in the least. My only problem there is that sometimes when Microsoft get into something late, they make a complete balls up of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's precedence for that. I mean, you're right. PSVR 2 will be interesting because it will test just how far adoption of VR has come. Because obviously, that's going to be a little bit pricey. It'd probably be the same cost as a PS5, I would imagine, with that sort of tech. But you've also got people like Valve are making another headset. They're not just making the Steam Deck, but so Valve's movement into hardware is an interesting one. While Microsoft driving everything towards content, Valve have gone from a content-driven platform more into the hardware side. Yeah. So they're going in the reverse direction.
That's interesting, though, because I think the driver behind both of those things, ironically, is to push their content to more people.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's good. That's the long-term goal.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So it's interesting because, like you say, they've kind of crossed over each other. They're going in opposite directions, but you can see you can see the logic from both sides. You can see, obviously.
Oh yeah,
Steam is stuck on the PC at the moment. They want to get into a bigger market, and a handheld makes perfect sense to me in terms of getting it into more hands and getting more people playing their games, and therefore getting more people buying them.
It's just a case of when it comes out, I guess, isn't it? There's a bit of a issue with that.
Yeah, although they did say the other day there's going to be no more hold-ups. Apparently it is due to come out this year, and it will come out this year. So, assuming they're true to their word, I should see mine Q2 this year.
That'd be good. I mean, it's about opening up markets that were, I think, like previously closed. Like the PC was closed as a platform because, well, you had to have a PC. There wasn't really any other way. It's not like with cloud gaming where it's not really. Sorry, the platform isn't as important as long as you can access like the tech or the games.
It surprises me actually that Steam haven't gone into cloud gaming. I'm really surprised at that.
Actually, yeah, it does.
Maybe
they will.
Yeah, I think they probably will. Again, I can imagine they're looking at it behind the scenes and trying to work out how they can deliver it, because a lot of their games, PC-based games, even on the Steam Deck, and I know some people got annoyed with me when I said that not all your Steam games are going to work on the Steam Deck, and I still stand by that. I can't see how some of these games are going to work on the Steam Deck.
Well, they don't all work on my PC. So.
Well, exactly. I mean, and then you're adding in another impediment to playing. If you haven't got a keyboard and mouse, some of these games just aren't going to be fun to play. But, nevertheless, there's going to be a huge number of of games available on the Steam Deck, probably enough to satisfy most people, and that's fine. But if you start moving into the mobile market, then you add in the problem that you're not dealing with a piece of hardware that you've got control over. So you're not controlling, what input methods people have got and all the rest of it. When someone's playing on a PC, they've got keyboard and mouse. When they're playing on the Steam Deck that they've got those haptic feedback things and all the the trackpads and all the rest of it. So you to some extent exactly what people have got, what you can offer them, how to make those games work. I can't imagine being able to get some of the PC based games working on a mobile very easily. So that could be a problem for you.
Not in the same way that they work on PC, the thing is, the PC used to be just known as the sort of domain for certain types of games like real-time strategy, like, things that require keyboard and mouse, basically. More and more Steam games support controllers. You're getting more conversions of console games. And I think the landscape changed a bit more when we went from PC-specific genres to, like, all genres being available on, like, PC because of console conversions and things like that. So it's a different kind of gaming landscape now because of how prevalent gaming is, just generally.
Absolutely, yeah. And at one time it was near the twain shall meet. You had PC games and you had console games, and there were a few crossovers, but a lot of times you just didn't get them, sports games back in the day on PC were crap a lot of the time because you just didn't have the controller, trying to play FIFA on a keyboard and mouse,
Oh, God. I remember the first Pentium PC I bought, it's like, there weren't any official controllers. You had all these third-party controllers, and half of the time, like if I was trying to play a racing game, the controller wouldn't work. So, people think things are awkward sometimes now. Well, it's about a million times better compared to the early days of PC gaming.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Back in the day, PC gaming involved more actual tweaking and twiddling than it did actually playing video games.
Yeah. PC gaming now it's still not as easy as console gaming, but it's pretty close, I would say. Most of the time I get a game, it works.
Yeah.
I might get some driver issues or I might get a few technical issues, but most of the time there isn't an issue. So being able to sort of translate that into something like, a handheld experience, as much as the game supports that kind of move as well. So like we've mentioned, that's a good thing, because it opens up gaming to more people and another audience.
Yeah, well, people forget that we've moved on to the point now where, when you and I started playing video games, and I remember right back, late 70s or whatever, when that started, there were, 2 or 3, 2 decades at least of people just trying to work out how to make these bloody things work. How do you,
I remember it well.
The number of different control methods that I had back in the day, all these weird things like the space orb and these weird controllers with strange thumbsticks, and I've tried all sorts of different things, and people were still trying to work it out, whereas now we've kind of arrived at pretty much, okay, VR's a bit different, but pretty much in the normal 2D space, if you like. You've got your control mechanisms, you've got your keyboard and mouse, you've got your controller, and that's pretty much it. And, it's a lot more simple now than it used to be. And a lot better for it, to be honest. But anyway, we've gone off topic. So
a little bit, yeah.
I'm gonna kind of reel it back in briefly and say, overall, do you think this is a good thing or not?
Okay, so generally I think yes for gamers. How much in the long term? Wow, yeah. Well, I'd like to see Activision Blizzard do maybe. I don't know. I think they need to reestablish their identity with their games because they lost it a bit, and hopefully Microsoft will help them do that. And I think for gamers, it could be a good thing. If you're a Sony fan, you might start crying salty tears, but you're probably going to do that anyway. But if you're a fan of gaming and it's not as important to you what platform you play it on, you just want to play a good variety of games, I think it's a great thing. I think it'll improve Game Pass.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't know.
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt there.
Yeah, and I think that's a significant thing. But is it a good thing for the industry as a whole? It's a seismic shift, and I think the fallout will be around for quite a while to come, especially until the deal has gone through. So I think we're in for an interesting ride. So strap in,
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
it could be wild. I mean, we could. I think the important thing as well is like we see a cultural change at Activision Blizzard, and I think we will as a result of Microsoft taking over the business. And I hope we see a lot of really good creative stuff come out of these studios once they're given the freedom to operate.
Absolutely.
So
And assuming they do get the freedom to operate, but given
yeah.
Microsoft's recent history since Phil Spencer took over, there were some early blips, with a couple of games being cancelled and all the rest of it. But I think that was part of the transition. I think since then, I think that they've done a pretty good job. And I think they talked about getting the hardware right. And Phil Spencer said, we've got the hardware right now. Now we're concentrating on the software and the platform delivery and all that kind of stuff. And he said, we are going to deliver. And he has delivered. They have delivered as a team. They've delivered.
I mean, they've delivered in Game Pass already a really good product, and it's one that can only get better with these type of acquisitions. Well, I'll say it again though, and I've said it before. I really want to see Microsoft produce more really interesting narrative-based games, and I think we will see them out of the Bethesda studios. Maybe not for a while, but we will, and I hope we do.
Yeah,
because then that'll shut up those people up who say that Microsoft don't have those type of games. No, not now, but I think they will.
Yeah, and going back to what I said before, I think a lot of people are pragmatic. I think a lot of people will be quite happy to, as long as Microsoft don't dominate, and I don't want that. I don't want Microsoft dominating. No. But as long as if Microsoft are competing and they're pushing Sony and all the other companies are competing and they're pushing each other, and we can get good games out of that, and Microsoft buying Activision Blizzard can maybe push some of the toxicity out of that company as well, then that's only a good thing. In the long term, if they buy up even more and then they start to dominate, then I don't think that's a good thing at all. I don't want any company, whether it be Sony, Microsoft, whoever it might be, I don't want any of these companies dominating. I want them to be in healthy competition with each other and pushing each other to make better games, better hardware, better services at decent prices for us as gamers. And I know that's a lot to ask, especially in the recent years with all the shenanigans with microtransactions and recently with NFTs and all the crap that they're pushing on that. But this amongst all that crap going on, this is actually for me quite a positive move. I think that the Activision Blizzard were looking more and more a toxic company, and I think that announcement of whatever it was they said. I can't remember. I haven't got it here anymore. I can't find it anymore. But when they said, we are reassessing our
relationship.
Here you go. Evaluating relationship with Activision. I think that they obviously were, and maybe this is going to be a good thing. Certainly in the short to medium term, and maybe not the short term because obviously it hasn't completed yet, but in the medium term, and could be in the long term. I do worry about consolidation, but, and I've brought this up a couple of times, I'm going to bring it up here now. Jeff Grubb says, and the next $1 billion game is more likely to come out of Steam Early Access than any existing publisher. It's not like movies where no new IPs are breaking through. And I think that's a good point to end it on. No matter how much consolidation goes on, no matter how big these companies get, the next big thing could very well come out of left field. That's where Minecraft came from.
This is the thing as well.
Say again?
And I've said it before, but one thing I think we need to get away from, especially in the West, is this idea that there are only AAA games and indie games.
Yeah.
You see, there is this middle ground, and if Microsoft can help sort of promote maybe the creative mindset around that single A sort of like middle ground game, because they're just as valid for the industry as any other type of game. And like Jeff Grubb said, he's right in the sense that these games can come out of nowhere. They can become these like big hits because people want good games at the end of the day.
Yeah.
They're on any platform. It doesn't matter what it is. They want to play a good game.
People don't care who makes them.
Yeah.
well, within reason, obviously. If there's a bunch
Some
of
do, but most don't actually.
crazy people making a game, or
Yeah.
somebody who's got political opinions that you are vehemently against, you might not want to play the game even if it's good or whatever. I don't know. People
Yeah.
have some responses along those lines, and that's up for people to make their own minds up on those kind of things. But
It is, yeah.
at the end of the day, we want good games. We don't want toxic cultures. I mean, I certainly don't,
No.
and I know you don't. I don't think the vast majority of gamers. I know there's a vocal minority who shout and bawl about absolutely everything, but I think gamers are not that much different to the rest of the community out there. They're just human beings who they enjoy their hobby. They want good games, and that's the end of it, really. And
Yeah, it is.
and I think this could offer good games. I think I as always, I'm in two minds about stuff like this. But I don't necessarily think this is a bad thing. And if Bethesda was Microsoft firing shots, well, they've just dumped a $70 billion nuke on the gaming industry, and
it does feel like that. Yeah.
I mean, whatever else happens, this is going to shake things up, and for better or worse, it's going to be an interesting couple of years.
That's right. I mean, I'm with you. I don't like monopolization. I don't think it's a good thing for any industry, let alone the gaming industry. But competition is very different, and healthy competition is a good thing. It's a good thing for companies, a good thing for end consumers. So let's hope it doesn't cause too much of an imbalance in the industry, and we get to benefit from it in terms of good games in the future.
Yep, I agree. And I think that's a good place to finish. I think we've pretty much done it to death and gone off track, as we always do, because we always have to go off track to some degree. Just as well Count wasn't here, because we'd have been talking about Pokemon or something.
Yeah.
But
right.
I think that's it. I think we're done. And I'm going to go and grab myself a cup of tea. I don't know what you're doing. What are you going to do now, Grant?
I don't know. A cup of tea sounds like a good idea, though.
All right.
Do one.
Enjoy your cup of tea, and I'll enjoy mine, and I'll speak to you in the next one. Bye.
Bye.